Carlos Nelson with What's Up Kansas City and Cascade Media Group. And today, this is our second Young Wave of the Future that we are featuring individuals in our community that are high achievers. Who do we have here?
My name is Amiri Hill.
Amiri, I'm so proud of you. In the audience, I want to let you know this is like my niece, and I hadn't even know how high achiever she was until I talked to her mom. Amiri, tell our audience a little bit about yourself. And as I want with this series, go back to the first time you can remember, kindergarten. Let our audience know what your life was about and coming up in your community. And this series also is designed to bridge the gap that we're having in race relations and what have you. And if these stories hit a note, one can see and say, oh, I didn't even consider that. I was in the same class as her. I didn't know she was feeling like that, or I didn't know. So, as in sports terms, the ball is in your court, Ms. Hill.
Okay, so I was born in Washington, D.C., and I lived in D.C. until I was in the fourth grade. I went to a D.C. public school. Until the third grade. So I went to a D.C. public school until the third grade.
Which school was it? Give a little more particulars to add to the flavor.
Okay, I went to Shepherd Elementary School, which is in Tacoma Park, Tacoma Park off of 16th Street in DC, in that area. So I went to school there, and I had a good experience up until third grade when there was a strong emphasis on test scores and making sure that everyone was getting a certain test score rather than what we were learning. So on top of that, just the experience at that school wasn't that good. I was one of 4 girls in my third grade class. So I decided.
African American heritage, is that what you're saying?
No, there was 4 girls and the rest of the class was like 95% boys.
Well, tell me this: what was the percentage of people of color diversity in the school? If I know you were little, but
yeah, it was a predominantly Black public school.
All right.
Yeah, so then after I left that public school, I went to private school, and that's where everything switched for me. I ended up going to a predominantly white elementary and middle school to finish out elementary school and also for middle school. And that was in Bethesda, Maryland. So that was a completely different environment. Then from there, I went to.
Tell them about the environment. Don't just rise up. Talk to what your feelings was in the environment. I know we switch environments. Adults have to, you come out of college and then you get into the corporate world. That environment is a little different, especially if you went to a HBCU college and went to a Black high school.
Yeah, so
that the other people can feel what you were feeling and know that they're not by themselves feeling that way. What was that like when you changed?
When I was in middle school at the predominantly white private school, race wasn't really on my mind at that school. I had really good friends, and I was the only Black friend within my group, but that wasn't really on my mind, and everyone got along really well. Since it was a small school, our class was 20, my class was 20 students, but there was maybe 4 Black people in the class, but race wasn't a huge issue at that school. And I think that had to do with our age, the fact that we were so young. Everyone pretty much got along. I think the issues we had within our class were trivial issues. It wasn't anything that was along racial lines, really. But there were incidents with the teachers that did have racial undertones to it. For example,
Program is brought to you by the Kansas City Business Association.
We were reading in 8th grade, the one who flew over we were reading To Kill a Mockingbird. And there's the N word in that book multiple times. We were reading it out loud, and the teacher was allowing the white students, to read it out loud. So that made me uncomfortable. And that led to me telling my parents, and they had a meeting with the teacher and other administration within the school, because some of my friends who were white at that school were looking at me like, I guess they were also uncomfortable and trying to also see what my reaction was going to be. So that ended up smoothing over after my parents had a conversation with the administration and the teacher. So that was probably the only prominent racial issue that was like blatantly obvious that I was completely aware of. But other than that, at Washington Episcopal School in Bethesda, Maryland, I had a really good time. Yeah, I enjoyed my time at that school. So after graduating from there in 8th grade, I went to the Connolly School of the Holy Child in Potomac, Maryland. That was an all-girls Catholic high school. And that was a drastically different experience. One, because it was all girls and it was Catholic, and my middle school was an Episcopal school. So I went from like no religion in elementary school to an Episcopal like education, and then now a Catholic education. So as far as religion, there was things that I just wasn't aware of because I didn't grow up, first of all, going to church every single Sunday. So in the Episcopal school, that was something that was new to me, having to go to chapel and stuff like that. And also in high school at the Catholic school, we had to go to Mass, and they made us go to Mass. So that was something that was just not, I wasn't used to. I was used to going to religious services from the Episcopal school, but I wasn't used to the Catholic.
How did you feel about that? Did you feel that you were being indoctrinated, or how did you feel? Let's talk a little bit about that, because with us being part of the diaspora, our history is different from European history. And what I have found, because we have a large sports channel, high school sports channel, when I talk to some of those kids and they talk about not learning Black history in school, not knowing their history, that has to me, a profound psychological effect on young minds like yourself. Can you talk about your feelings? And my whole thing is, we cannot bring this together unless everybody knows how we feel as a community and outside our community.
Yeah, so in regards to religion, at the Episcopal school, I think that was just another moment with me being young, and I was kind of just going through the motions. I was saying prayer, but I wasn't really believing what I said at the end of the day. I was just reciting it. I had memorized it at that school, but I wasn't. I would say that I wasn't doing it with any purpose or any full meaning behind it. I was just saying it because everybody else was saying it, and the religion classes at the Episcopal school were a little bit different because the Episcopal religion is obviously very different than Catholicism. So, but the way they teach it at Washington Episcopal School is a little bit more on an emphasis of like being kind and just being an overall good person, being nice. They emphasize more of that rather than.
I like that right off the bat. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
In this world, I've had some conversations, and some people have been offended during the interviews when I say I think we all need to do an instant reset on our morals and what have you. And people act like I'm speaking to them. I'm like, if the shoe fit, wear it. But how I see it, that we've gotten off track, especially people of color, on you got to be able to assimilate into white society and white culture, but you do not have to take those values on. And a lot of the values are with the system that we live in, a capitalist system. a monetary situation, materialistic over integrity, over family. And what I see, where I put my hope in young people like you, your generation looks at it different. And from a political standpoint, those girls up in DC that Ocasio and they call them I forgot what they call them. They got a name for the 4 congresswomen, and they moving forward, and they're not afraid to move forward on issues that affect them and people that look like them, and they're not apologizing and for what they're saying. And I find I'm taking a little bit of time on the interview, taking up the time, but I find Black people in general, when they're right or wrong and they're in a situation with the majority community, they feel themselves that they might should apologize or something, because they're making some people feel uncomfortable with the truth. And we have been uncomfortable since we came out our mother's womb.
Yeah.
So go on to your college experience, where you're at now. And I've got your resume. You have a hell of a resume, Miss Hill. Run that down, your accomplishments, so our community can enjoy in the pride that I feel for you as a young woman of color and a high achiever.
Okay, so at the beginning of the first internship I ever worked with was at the Federal Aviation Administration, and that was through my high school. We had to do a senior internship program, and we had to complete an internship at a organization that we were interested in at the time. So at the Federal Aviation Administration, I was working in the Office of Adjudication under a lawyer. And I was basically helping her as much as I could without, obviously, I don't have a law degree, so I couldn't do that much, but I was helping her more so with administrative work, organizing her cases for her and doing a little bit of research myself that I could do. So I did that my senior year of high school for 2 weeks, the last month before I graduated. And then from there, I went off to Loyola University, New Orleans, and I went down in New Orleans I was down there for a year and a half. And so I was an office assistant in the Student Success Center. And so that was where
Or did you know what you wanted to major as a freshman?
I did know what I wanted to major in. I was a political science major at Loyola. I still am a political science major, but at the University of Maryland, they call it government and politics, but it's the same thing. So down there, I was an office assistant, and that just strengthened my administrative skills. And then I decided that New Orleans wasn't the best place for me, and I actually preferred the DC, Maryland, and Virginia area a lot more. So I decided to come back home, and I applied to a lot of schools to transfer in the DMV area, and I applied to GW.
Tell our audience that might not know what the DMV area is.
Yeah, that's the DMV.
I'm out Midwest.
That's the DC metropolitan area, so DC, Maryland, and Virginia. So I decided that I wanted to move on from New Orleans and come back home because I felt that my major was best in the DC, Maryland, and Virginia area. So I applied to George Washington University, American University, University of Maryland, University of Maryland, Baltimore County. So I go to the University of Maryland College Park, but there's also University of Maryland, Baltimore County. And so I got into all the
Turpins.
I'm sorry?
The Turpins, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that University of Maryland College Park is bigger, has all the sports and stuff like that. UMBC also a very good school, but it's just in Baltimore. So I decided to go to UMD, just because I thought that they had really good opportunities for what I wanted to do. And I continued my government major there. So as my first semester there, I decided to work as an office assistant again. And so I was in the Department of Hearing and Speech, and I was just doing more administrative work. I completed my junior year, and I completed my sophomore year, and then going into my junior year, I decided that I wanted to really put what I had been learning about political science to use. So I applied to a lot of internships on Capitol Hill because I was so close to Capitol Hill. I thought, why not take advantage of being so close to the Capitol?
Action.
Yeah, everything going on. So I applied to many offices. Some I never heard back from, some I heard back from, but it didn't go any further. And then one office I applied to was Congresswoman Yvette Clarke, and she represents the 9th District in Brooklyn, New York. And I have family that's from Brooklyn, so I felt like I would have a good connection to her office. And a lot of times,
family connection.
Yeah, and a lot of times people on the Hill in those offices, they like to hire people that have a connection to the district because they're able to understand what's going on in the district. So I was really excited when I was offered the opportunity to intern in her office. One, because she's a Black woman and I admire Black women that are doing well in politics. And also that she took over the district that Shirley Chisholm used to run herself. So it was, gerrymandering.
The historic part and going in the direction that you want to go in.
Exactly, yeah. She's also representing that area as well now. So I really enjoyed my time there. I was there for almost a year until coronavirus hit and I had to not go into the office anymore. So that internship was really cool. I got to sit in on meetings. I was helping with the Congresswoman's organization. I got to go to a few hearings. And I did also administrative work. So that's where all my administrative experience really helped me get to that position because I was helping in the front office and stuff related to that. So after that, a lot of African American or Black people on the Hill are very in tune to the Congressional Black Caucus. And a lot of staffers on the Hill, Black staffers on the Hill, have been an intern for the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. So I was encouraged to apply by a staffer in Congresswoman Clarke's office. So I decided to send in my application and recommendations and everything related to that. And I found out I was accepted during the middle of May this year, and I was really excited to hear about that. And I started interning for the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation in June 1st. And that went from June until, it went from about June 1st until the end of July. And because of COVID-19, everything was virtual, but it was still a wonderful experience. There's a lot of networking, professional development. We did group projects where we drafted a piece of legislation that we actually proposed to members of Congress or members of the CBC.
And what was that? What was that, if it's not too personal, top secret?
So my group did a bill on removing student resource officers and just police officers in general from schools. So my group we proposed a bill on that, and then another group, for example, proposed a bill on just police reform with everything that happened that was going on this summer and is still going on. So yeah, that's basically what we talked about, and we did different like parts of the legislation proposal. So for example, I did the outreach, so I kind of created a map of how we would advance our legislation, who we would have sponsor our bill, which members of Congress from the House and the Senate, which organizations would also sponsor our
How
bill.
did you present that? Did you present that proposal to members of that you had targeted? And by the way, who I was talking about, they call them the squad, Ocasio and her group. And I think off camera, I told you Friday, I interviewed two members of the Missouri Black Caucus, young girls like yourself, and it was like full steam ahead with our movement on economics, police reform, and so forth. Go ahead.
Can you repeat the question again? I'm sorry.
All right. Well, you just was telling your rise to the caucus and what have you, and I interrupted you because I had a brain lock earlier in the interview when I was saying, personally, I support the younger generation like yourself and older people like us, advising you on what we've seen. But you have the energy, you have the intelligence, and what I would like to say, the savoir-faire to finesse what needs to be finessed, and are serious and not jaded to the material things that, through no fault of ours to a degree, because we're being controlled by the media and our environment, that we're attached to some of the wrong things. The old, and I'm saying my generation, but you know, they have a saying that you can't see the forest for the trees. Mm-hmm. And your generation has come up digitally, virtually, with the smartphone in your hand and access to much more information than my generation even thought about. And as you being on the Hill and coming in contact with legislators, especially of our ilk, you know, they definitely depend on you because of their communication skills. And I'm not talking about just them, I'm talking about an age group, a demographic, are limited.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I would say that I think as an intern on the Hill, when it came to technology and stuff related to that, a lot of times it wasn't the member of Congress that was over their own technology and communication in that regard. That's where their staffers came in, and a lot of times their staffers were very young people. I know specifically in Congressman Clark's office, everyone was very young. And so that was good to be around other young people as well. But like I said, in regards to technology, it was mainly younger people who are in charge of technology and how the congressmen and women are placing their views on social media, creating their stances. It's not directly through them. Spoiler, I don't know if people thought that they were.
Well, most people don't. Let me say this. Didn't I say earlier that who owns all of the communications on the planet? We're not just talking about no ad or no. We're on Zoom. Who owns Zoom? Who owns YouTube? They're fashioning our views. They're letting you see what agrees with you for the most part. And so therefore, each and every one of us are living in a bubble of truth that is our truth.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would say that a lot of times when people are searching certain issues, I think they don't realize that the search results that appear are usually geared toward what they already agree with, and they don't usually see the other side necessarily. And it's going to take a little bit more effort to look and search for the other side and see that other perspective that maybe you might disagree with, or maybe it might change your perspective.
But so where I'm at, being one of the only Black digital media companies 100% owned, like Roland Martin and what have you, I think my fiduciary responsibilities is to have these conversations that there's a certain segment that will look at this and evaluate what we're talking about and put it in their tube. Or is this what's happening to us or what? So where do you see 220, 221 lining up for you? And what are some of the goals and aspirations that you wish to achieve for 221, 222?
Coming up, I'm looking forward to graduating from and attaining my Bachelor's of Arts degree in Government and Politics in May 2021. I also will be interning with the Student Legal Aid Office on my campus for the spring 2021 semester. And that will possibly be either remote or in person, depending on what my school determines to do with the next semester. However, in regards to my future, post-grad, I'm looking to attend law school. I'm currently studying for the LSAT at the moment, which is a very stressful experience, but I just know it's temporary. And so I'd like to attend law school. I don't know what exact realm of law that I would like to be in specifically. Sometimes I think that maybe I'd like to work for the ACLU. Sometimes I think about working for the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, since I am on the executive board for the NAACP chapter at the University of Maryland. I think about maybe becoming a federal judge one day, so I'm all over the place. But right now, my main goal is law school.
What do you have to say? What are your feelings on the Supreme Court Justice that Ginsburg that just passed away?
I think it's very unfortunate that she recently passed away. Just in regards to the future of the court and how the court will be set up. However, she left a very strong and long-lasting legacy on this country and people's lives. But I'm looking forward to see how she will be replaced and how the court will look in the future.
Can you talk about some of the mentors in your life that have helped you move forward with your skill set, and people that really have shaped you to who you are now?
I think I would say academically, I believe a few high school teachers definitely shaped.
If you can remember their names, give them their propers, as I like to say.
Okay. My English teacher from junior year, her name is Miss Moylan. I think she definitely laid the foundation for my writing skills. And I also think that just goes to the entire Conley School, the Holy Child English department. I think they definitely laid a strong foundation for my writing skills, which I do a lot of writing just in regards to my schoolwork, and my internships also require a lot of writing as well. And I think that they helped strengthen my skills to where they are now. I would also say that the people I've interacted with, staffers in the Congresswoman Clark's office.
Give them their propers, their names. Let them know while they on this side of the earth that you appreciate them.
Yes, Kendall Mitchell, she was definitely a mentor for me while I was in the office. And she just helped guide me and gave me direction in regards to how I could do well while I was on the Hill, and how I could, she taught me a lot as well. And also I would say in regards to professors, Dr. White from Loyola University New Orleans, he definitely helped, emphasize, he emphasized my interest in political science and government and politics and everything related to government relations.
What did he say to you per se that influenced you that way?
Well, I would say I was in his political theory class my freshman year, and that was an advanced class. And as a freshman at Loyola University New Orleans, you don't get to choose your classes for your first semester. They pick your classes. So I was put in that class, and at first I was unsure why I was put in that class because it was like a 300 level class. And I was expecting intro to gov or intro to government relations. And so when I was put in that class, I was very weary of how the class was going to be set up. I really thought that I wasn't going to be well prepared to do well in the class. And so after we had to do our midterm assignment, which was a in-person test on different philosophers, and I ended up doing very well. I got an A on the midterm, and then I had to do a paper at the end of the class, and I wrote my paper about Plato and feminism, and I ended up getting an A on that paper as well. And so after each of those assignments, I had conversations with him asking how I could improve my work even more and what I could have added to do better. And he just gave me a lot of encouraging words, and it really instilled my confidence in my own knowledge and made me realize that I kind of took away the imposter syndrome that I was feeling in that class. And I knew that the 300 in front of the class didn't really matter because I was still able to do well in the class. And working with Dr. White, he just enforced that confidence in me. So
I'm cut you off a minute. You used the word that I'm saying over the last possibly 2 decades that I've heard people that have risen to the top, imposter syndrome. Didn't you use that word?
Yes.
All right. And that's a feeling, you're the greatest, and you're feeling that you possibly and that's part of the human condition also.
Yeah,
Or would you agree?
I think imposter syndrome is something that a lot of Black people have to deal with when they're in higher spaces and places. So we had that conversation amongst my cohort for the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation.
Talk about that a little bit. Give as much information on what's going on and what you all are talking about and what you're thinking about. That's important.
Yeah, I think in that space, a lot of us, we were all very smart people and still are.
What age group? Describe what age group is in that cohort that you're in. Or where?
Everyone in that cohort was probably between maybe 18 and 22.
Are they all people of color?
Yes.
All right. What's the demographic on male, female, and age group? Run that down if you can, real quick.
So it was between 18 and 22-year-olds, some recent grads from undergrad, some juniors and seniors, and then maybe very few freshmen. Maybe
on a 1 to 10 level, as it relates to intelligence and all of the other things that go along with being at the top of the class, where would you say that body was in that age bracket nationwide?
At 10, I think everyone was at the top of their class.
Top of their game.
Yeah.
Now tell our audience a little bit about what was going on.
Amongst us, or in
the cohort, what you were discussing. That I took you away from the original topic. I tend to do that, but we back on. What was the so that we'll know what you all are talking about, what your ideas are, and so forth.
So like we said, we talked about imposter syndrome and how even people who were in the cohort were feeling that amongst themselves, and how everyone was just very high achieving, and it kind of like made you at times think, oh, should I be here? But you got here and you're part of the cohort for a reason, so you definitely deserve to be here. I think we also talked about other issues such as police reform, because that
How
internship.
did y'all feel on that? On a 1 to 10, did all of y'all feel that they need training, or they need less funding, or a combination?
The topic of training wasn't really seen as necessary. I think the majority of the people wanted to abolish the police. That was the main conversation, that we should defund and abolish the
What
police.
was can you give us a few talking points? Why? I'm a proponent of, let's not just say get out the house. Why do you want me to get out the house?
So a lot of people were saying abolish the police because people, I would say that my generation tends to look at racism and issues that we're facing now as part of a system, and we look at it more as systemic racism. And the system was never made to work for us, so we have to recreate the system and start from scratch. We can't use the system that white people created to benefit them and assume that if we change one or two things, it's going to suddenly benefit us, since we already have Black people in high spaces and we're still facing issues that have been going on forever. So that was seen with, like, this whole George Floyd incident woke up a lot of white people, but there was also Tamir Rice, there was Freddie Gray, all under President Obama. So it's not a matter of, I think we all came to the conclusion that it's not a matter of we need more Black people necessarily to change the system, because we did have a Black person in the highest position in the land, and we still were facing the same issues that we faced years ago. So that's why many people took the stance that we need to defund the police and reallocate money and resources to other departments.
Did they have any solutions? If we defund the police, who's going to keep law and order in Gotham City?
The solutions were that a lot, if you read like stats on what's going on, a lot of times, like we don't need police officers to attend to mental health issues, and a lot of times those are major issues that the police respond to. And so people were saying we need to figure out how to get mental health workers trained so that they can respond to those situations. And we also have to, a lot of what we were talking about was also looking at the local level of politics as well, and realize that our mayors and governors have a lot of agency in this process too. And a lot of people look to the president and his cabinet and his administration and Congress as a solution to police reform, when a lot of times it's the local government or the governor or the mayor that is really the person that we need to put pressure on and vote in those local elections, and don't only vote for the general presidential election. Yeah, so it was also like holding the local officials accountable to the same degree that we hold the president, and bring awareness to those elections as well.
Do you think we hold our local officials accountable, people of color, once they get in office? Or do you think we just feel that they look like us and they're going to represent our interests from your age group standpoint?
From my age group standpoint?
Yeah, well, how do you see our elected officials, since you became aware of what politics are, how politics affect our day-to-day life? That you said that all of y'all were on 10, on point, basically. Could you give me some insight, or our viewers some insight, or how you feel that our political leadership has handled the Black vote and the things that the African American community would like to see transpire?
I would say that also a lot of the people my age, maybe the first election, like the first presidential election we're about to vote in is this one. And only a handful of us got to vote in the last one. So we're just coming up into political participation just in the past 4 years. And I would say that when it comes to like holding those officials accountable. I think that we have a different outlook than the older generation because the older generation had to see more and had to go through more, and they couldn't even like go to the same schools as white people, and they couldn't wash their hands or drink from the same water fountain as white people. So when the older generation sees Black people in these spaces, it's there's more excitement around it, and they're just happy that they're there. Whereas because my generation grew up with Obama as president, we kind of criticize Black leaders differently. We might say that, okay, it's good that that's a Black person, but okay, they're not doing their job correctly. For example, the Attorney General in Kentucky, who is supposed to be in charge of arresting the police officers that killed Breonna Taylor, he's a Black man, but I know a lot of my peers don't like him, and it's not just because he's like, we're not just rooting for him just because he's Black, but like he's not doing his job properly. So, or he's not doing his job how we believe he should actually be doing his job. So just because there's a person of color or a Black person in a position of power doesn't mean, I think my generation still tries to hold them accountable and make sure that they're doing their job to the extent that we would like them to.
That's great. Hey, are there any closing thoughts that you would like to impart to our audience as a whole? I wanted to say to our older audience and to your age group audience, are there any thing that you'd like to part? Encouraging words on one part, looking forward to the future. In your words, I'm just giving you some subject matter, but what's your closing words, Ms. Hill?
I would just encourage everyone to vote and to vote early if possible. To mail, if you're going to vote by mail your ballot in early. I know my generation, we're not the most favorable of Joe Biden, but I think we have to realize that because we want such dramatic change or revolutionary change, I think we need to get past Trump so that we can move forward towards our goals. And so I think we should be voting, and you should vote for whoever you think will get you towards that goal. But I think that we should not disregard voting. I think voting is very important. So I would like to encourage everyone to vote, however that may be. Early voting is also something that we should definitely take advantage of, because I do believe that the polls are probably going to be crowded on election day. So like I said, I just encourage everyone to vote.
All right. I want you to send some parting words to the young high schoolers. Remember, I told you I have a large high school audience from my sports, and I encourage them to go to What's Up Kansas City so that they can be tuned into the direction of life that they might want to go, because they'll see someone like you, and that will. What words of encouragement would you say to a young person that's in high school or ninth grader or so forth?
I would definitely encourage a high schooler to read as much as possible, to read from every perspective on any issue or any topic that you're interested in. Even if that's dance, if that's art, I'd encourage you to read as much as you can about that topic. And also I would like to say to find a mentor if possible, find someone that you can.
How important is that? Let them know, how important is a mentor to you?
Mentors are extremely important, because even for me right now, as I'm trying to go through the law school admissions process, I had to find a mentor so that I could be navigated through the process, since it's very confusing as someone who doesn't know many people that have also gone through this process. So having a mentor that can give you insight and give you those tips and advice that would help you do well is always helpful. And even on the high school level, if you're thinking about going to college, then I would definitely recommend finding a mentor if you already know you have a college in mind that you want to go to, making sure you attend those admissions events and staying in contact with the admissions officers. Sometimes they have ambassador programs in their offices where current students reach out to prospective students. So forming a relationship with someone that already goes to that school, they can already give you the insight and information you need to apply and be admitted. So overall, I would encourage everyone to vote. I would encourage high schoolers to read as much as possible and to find a mentor, and for everyone to just keep pushing on.
Hey, Miss Hill, I look at you and I think about your mom, and you know, we had in our family, we had Big Grace and your mom was Little Grace. Mm-hmm. And I know that she has to be so proud of you and your sister. And I know my grandmother, Hattie, she would be so proud of Grace and what Grace has produced in you. And I'm proud that you're part of our family and that you really understand who you are and where you should be placing importance, not just to benefit yourself, to benefit our community as a whole. And I'm stealing the line from Jim Watts again, one of my hosts on different shows. He says, it's a plum pleasing pleasure to have had you on the show. So I done stole his line. And now I'm going to use our normal closing line. When you invest in your community, you're really just investing in yourself. Good night.
This program is brought to you by Dielectric LLC, Energy in Motion.